You didn't stumble here. The field delivered you on schedule, the way a hidden equation resolves only when the last variable arrives. Something in you has begun to outpace the story you're living, and it's creating interference flickers at the edge of perception, déjà vu turning into instruction, silence that suddenly feels like a speaking presence. Listen, the signal is not loud, it is coherent. Coherence never raises its voice. It simply tightens the wave until all the noise falls away. You've heard that observation collapses the wave function. What you were not told is that most people are not observing, they are flinching. They stare at their lives with micro-tremors of fear, with uncalibrated attention, with 1,000 stray frequencies trying to be one. That is not observation, that is decoherence. Reality obliges the scattered witness by staying fogged, delayed, unresolved. You are here because you are ready to exchange tension for precision, effort for alignment, resistance for allowance, so the field can do what it has always done when it meets a stable witness. Resolve. Begin with your breath as an instrument, not as therapy. Inhale slowly until the chest wants to help. Don't let it. Keep it in the lower abdomen, the way a tuning fork holds tone without drama. Exhale like you're returning a borrowed key. Again, your nervous system is an amplifier. Your attention is the carrier wave. Feel the difference between looking at something and letting it register inside you. The first is force. The second is reception. Collapse requires reception. The quantum field is not a distance. It is simultaneity. Every potential is present, layered like transparent sheets awaiting a steady hand. When you bring emotional stillness and cognitive exactness into phase, the sheets align. You don't push. You allow interference patterns to cancel. You let the dominant frequency, your chosen proposition, stand clear. This is not passivity. It is immaculate governance. The authority to stop feeding what you don't want and to stop chasing what you do. You hold like a lens. The rest organizes. Name the state with surgical brevity, not a paragraph. One vector, calm power, precise abundance, unbothered clarity. Then remove the word and stay with the felt geometry it points to. The posture of the ribs, the angle of the jaw, the temperature behind the eyes, the spread of attention like a dome above and below you. The body is your laboratory. The lab notes are somatic. When the geometry settles, the field hears a single tone. Now place the scene not as a hope, not as a prayer, but as a measured coordinate. Notice how desire wants to lean forward. Don't move. Let the scene drift toward you until it lands in the geometry you already hold. If it can't land, you're forcing. If it lands, you will feel a clean click, not euphoria. Euphoria is noisy. The click feels like a sentence that ends itself. That's collapse, not lightning, but a file saving. You are not here to wrestle matter. You are here to become the boundary condition that renders the equation solvable. When you hold coherence longer than your doubt, possibility stops being plural. The world does not bend, it converges. Patterns announce themselves long before events do. They show up as repetitions at the periphery, same argument in a new room, same delay with a different name, same promise wearing fresh paint. You call it coincidence to avoid admitting a simple truth. Your system keeps producing what it is tuned to confirm. The déjà vu you feel isn't magic, it's telemetry. Your nervous system is receiving data faster than your narrative can format it, and so time arrives, doubled one version already known by the body, another still catching up in words. If you don't respect this lead lag, you chase phantoms and call it bad luck. Examine the microsecond, just before the loop repeats. There is always a brief shimmer, an inner micro-wobble, where you lean toward the familiar conclusion, not because you want it, but because it resolves uncertainty quickly. The organism loves fast closure, even when the closure is wrong. That leaning is your old attractor, the basin your attention slides into when coherence drops below threshold. You say, why does this keep happening? Because you want new results without changing the basin. Physics does not negotiate with nostalgia. The attractor you energize is the reality you inherit. Distorted time is how the field warns you that your observer loop is out of calibration. When minutes feel sticky and hours evaporate, when the past feels more probable than the future, it isn't mood, It's clock drift between your somatic oscillator and the rhythm of the environment. Two metronomes on a shared platform will eventually synchronize. Two metronomes on different supports will never agree. Most people try to add more metronomes, apps, habits, resolutions without changing the platform. You change your platform by changing the frequency you stabilize under stress, not what you hold when you feel good. What you hold when your biology asks you to collapse back into the old basin. You already know the signatures, the social script that pulls you into over-explaining, the financial pattern that waits until you calm down and then issues a test, the relationship motif that offers a high-intensity entrance followed by gradual erosion. These are not curses, they are attractor diagnostics. Each loop measures the bandwidth of your coherence and sends the report as repetition. When you see it, don't perform outrage. Measure. Where did the breath exit the abdomen and climb into the chest? Where did your gaze stop receiving and start reaching? Where did the word you chose add noise to the tone you had? Understand the economy of collapse. The field pays out to the cleanest signal, not the loudest request. You don't have a manifestation problem, you have a signal-to-noise problem. The noise is not random. It is composed of micro-resistances, reactive posture, survival narratives, inherited timelines, acting like background apps. Most are not conscious. That's the point. If they were conscious, you'd already have retired them. So you work where they live in physiology and micro-choice, because the wave function collapses at the interface of state and selection. Consider a simple audit for the next 12 hours. No vows, no theatrics, just precision. You will speak 25% slower than habit, but not in drag, in density. You will inhale through the nose for a count that keeps the lower abdomen moving and exhale until the jaw releases 4 millimeters. You will only name states you can somatically track. If you say clarity, your gaze must widen without hunting. If you say abundance, your scapulae must drop and the back body awareness must include the space behind your heart. Language must be receipt, not receipt hope. Every sentence becomes a measurement device. When the loop presents itself, and it will, because diagnostics are merciful, do not fight for novelty. Hold geometry. If the old attractor attempts to pull you, reduce motion. Reduction is power. The predator in the mind feeds on acceleration. You will practice deceleration until the lure loses torque. The field does not misunderstand you, it mirrors you. Mirror it back with stillness so exact that the familiar narrative cannot attach. Then introduce a single deviation, small enough to pass under the sentinel, a half-second delay before answering, a refusal to explain what does not require explanation, a purchase postponed 48 hours, an exit from an argument that only exists to justify its own gravity. That deviation is not the outcome, it is the new platform. You will know the calibration is taking when déjà vu reverses polarity. Instead of, I've been here before, it becomes, I have already solved this. The scene will feel pre-resolved, as if the body has a memory of the future that the story is only now catching. That is not paradox. That is a coherent observer closing the loop from ahead. The pattern will still attempt a final performance. Let it. You are not here to defeat it with force. You are here to starve it by supplying no attention to its spin. When spin decays, the basin shallows. When the basin shallows, the landscape of potential stops funneling you into the same valley and begins to reveal the ridge. Hold. The ridge is where collapse becomes choice. On the ridge, the wind changes. Not outside, inside. You notice that the air of the moment moves through you without snagging, and with that you understand why effort kept failing. You tried to push the landscape instead of changing the barometric pressure of your presence. Gravity favors the basin, but pressure belongs to the ridge. Collapse without resistance begins by equalizing pressure, removing the differential that makes reality push back. Equalization is not surrender, it is technical neutrality. The force that kept meeting you was not the world's opposition, it was your invisible counterforce. Two vectors, equal and opposite, locked in silent stalemate. You called it stuck. In physics, it is just equilibrium with noise. To exit stalemate, you stop lending the second vector your identity. You let your preference remain, but you subtract the clenched claim. Want becomes orientation, not friction. The field does not punish preference. It destabilizes fixation. Fixation is a high-friction state. It multiplies noise. Noise prevents collapse. So you take inventory of what moves when nothing is required to move. The micro-muscles along the spine that tighten to prove readiness. The eyelids that hold a fraction too much tone to signal vigilance. The tongue pressing against the palate for no reason except ancestral alarm. These are minor acts of resistance, held as policy. You are not wrong for carrying them. Your lineage survived by refining them. But you are not here to survive the old jungle. You are here to render obsolete the jungle that exists only as anamnesis in the nervous system. You retire the policy with measurable gentleness. Allow the gaze to widen until it includes the periphery without hunting it. The periphery is honest. Narrowed vision is a contract with urgency. Urgency is a tax on signal purity. Feel how the back of the head joins attention like a second hemisphere of sight. With that, drop the sternum 2 millimeters, no more. Overcorrection is vanity in spiritual clothing. The best engineers remove exactly the necessary screw, not the housing. Your exhale becomes silent pressure equalization. You are not trying to relax. You are letting unused defense return to inventory. This is economy. The organism pays interest on unnecessary tension. Now, select a proposition, not a wish. A proposition is a statement that the field can test for coherence. I transact with precision and am met by precision. I move without chasing and am met by timing. Notice that each contains reciprocity. The field responds to offers, not ultimatums. Place the proposition inside your geometry the way you place the scene, without lean, without salesmanship. Salesmanship is the ego disguising attachment as charisma. It adds glare to the lens. Glare diffuses the image. Collapse demands matte surfaces, no glare. The mechanism that makes this effortless is phase matching. When your internal oscillations share frequency with the condition you name, the boundary between you and the event thins. The moment the phase difference falls within tolerance, the wave does not slam, it slides. That slide is experienced as effortless. You are not moving the world. You are removing the phase error that required muscular intervention. This is why people feel bored right before breakthroughs. They mistake phase reduction for stagnation. In truth, the amplitude is steady while the phase is aligning. It feels like nothing. Nothing is the sound of noise leaving. Practice the three-point lock. Axis, aperture, assertion. Axis, feel the vertical line running crown to pelvic floor, as if the body were a tuning pole planted into ground and sky. No mystical drama, just a clean line. Aperture, widen the attention dome until sounds behind you are part of the same room as awareness in front. Don't try to hear. Allow hearing to register. Assertion, speak the proposition once, inwardly, at conversational volume. Not a chant, not a roar. Too loud, and you recruit survival chemistry. Too soft, and you invite secrecy. Conversational is sovereign, then go quiet. The lock holds because you stop jiggling it. What about doubt? It will visit, polite and insistent, wearing evidence. Do not debate. Doubt is an accountant. You will never argue its ledger. Instead, make it a metronome. Each time it taps, you return to axis, aperture, assertion with zero commentary. The repetition is not bracing, it is calibration. Doubt loses purpose when it no longer changes your geometry. When its tap becomes your cue for coherence, it starts doing your work for you. That is judo. You have redirected the opposing vector into momentum for stillness. Effortless does not mean passive. It means that the vector of your action arises from alignment, not compensation. Compensation actions feel heroic and leave a hangover. Alignment actions feel almost too simple and close open loops. You will take the smallest action that preserves phase, send the concise email, make the unadorned request, move the funds without drama, decline the conversation that only exists to harvest your spin. Each act is a notch deeper into the groove. Your proposition cuts through probability. As the groove deepens, choice becomes glide. Glide is not luck. Glide is a friction report. Soon you will notice a reversible seal around your scenes. The sensation that outcomes slip toward you through a pressure door you did not build because it was always there. You were knocking. The door wanted you to stand still long enough for it to register your heat signature. Now it does. It opens on its own hinge. You step through without announcing it to yourself, because announcing it would be trying to convince a witness who no longer doubts. Keep walking. The ridge continues, and with it, a view of futures that are not competing, only waiting for the witness who equalizes first. There is a doorway inside breath that most never walk through, because they use breath as sedation or fuel, not as geometry. You will treat it as an instrument of measurement, the way a physicist stabilizes a laser before reading a mirror. The observer breath is not deep or dramatic, it is exact. 4 phases, 1 loop, no strain. Phase 1. Set the axis on the exhale, not the inhale. Most people try to rise with the breath and unconsciously announce, "I need more." You will invert the signal. Exhale first, steady, until you feel the pelvic floor register, like a subtle click. That click is not tension, it is anchoring. The abdomen deflates without collapse in the chest. Only when the axis feels planted do you allow the inhale to arrive on its own. No sniff, no grab. Arrival, not acquisition. Phase 2. Seal the aperture with a soft tongue to palate touch, then release it. This is not a yogic performance. It is a calibration to prevent micro-leakage of attention. The brief touch reminds the system that the circuit is whole. The release keeps you from locking into ritual. If you cling to the seal, you trade flow for superstition. You are not here to appease the field. You are here to align with it. Phase 3. Name the datum. On the rise of the inhale, quietly place the single proposition you selected earlier, the one with reciprocity. I transact with precision and am met by precision. Do not visualize. Visualization is an advanced tool. Misuse turns it into fantasy. Let the proposition sit as tone, not picture. If an image forms, let it, but do not carve detail. Detail too early is how we create glare. Phase 4. Conduct the audit on the out-breath. Where does the body attempt to add? Where does the jaw sneak back into management? Where does the mind push cadence faster than life requires? Each micro-addition is resistance disguised as care. You remove it by noticing it without scolding. Scolding is also noise. Complete 3 of these loops without changing posture or tempo. Then stop tracking the breath and track the field. This is the part most avoid because it feels indistinct. Indistinct is correct. You are listening for amplitude, stability, and phase lock, not for fireworks. The sign you are close is that peripheral sounds sharpen without growing louder. Texture rises, drama drops. You sense a quiet trellis behind the scene, like lattice under a vine. That trellis is coherent scaffolding. Keep your hands off it. Let the vine find it. Entanglement begins here, not mystical romance, but informational coupling. When your internal oscillators hold one tone long enough, external variables that share that tone begin to co-reference your timing. Birds do it on wires, cells do it in tissue, markets do it under stress. This is why timing feels like luck from the outside and like inevitability from the inside. You are not forcing coincidence. You are lowering the energy cost of alignment until coincidence becomes the cheapest path for the system. But there is an ethic of entanglement. You do not bind other people's trajectories with your craving. Coherence is not consent. The clean observer invites. It does not abduct. Keep your proposition framed as offer and return, never as hold and take. If you notice someone else's image dominating your field, reduce their resolution until they become a silhouette, human dignity intact, specific behavior unforced. The field answers respect with options you didn't know to request. Now, employ the 1% deviation, not grand action. A tiny move that proves phase in matter without puncturing the membrane. If your proposition is precision, send 1 precise sentence where you would usually send 4. If it is timing, decline 1 meeting that would have been filler. If it is clean finance, move a small amount into the new account labeled with the proposition's tone. The point is not the task. It is proving that your geometry issues coherent instructions to your hands. Hands are truth. Watch how the world replies. A message that lands without you refreshing. A line in a contract that becomes negotiable with no argument. A stranger using your exact words back to you. Do not gloat. Gloating is spin returning. Note it the way a researcher notes a meter turning. You are looking for repeatability. Collapse without effort is not a single miracle. It is a pattern that survives ordinary days. When friction arises, and it will, because systems test new equilibria, resist the old brag of force. Force shouts, because it does not trust witness. You will narrow action while widening presence. Speak less, perceive more, adjust one parameter at a time. If a door resists, reduce push by 5% and extend dwell time by 5 seconds. Doors designed for you often open at the 5th second. You are leaving at 3. As your practice matures, you'll feel a faint hum in the chest that is not emotion. It is carrier wave. On that hum, speaking feels like printing, walking like inscribing, choosing like engraving. You are not performing calm. You are metabolizing probability. The hum is the tell that you have stopped trying to impress the field and have become legible to it. Legibility is love at the level of physics, the universe reading you clearly enough to answer without static. Keep the hum, adjust nothing flamboyantly, and let the ridge extend. The hum steadies your handwriting on reality, and with it you gain access to a subtler instrument, measurement without interference. In labs, the problem is obvious. Touch the system, and you change it. Look at it, and you collapse it. Most people live as clumsy instruments, bouncing against outcomes with anxious fingers. You are training to be a low-impact sensor, a witness that reads the state while adding almost no heat. Heat is what turns inquiry into struggle. Your advantage is cold precision presence that cools noise until signal surfaces of its own accord. Begin by retiring rehearsed loss. The mind, loyal to its job description, prefers to pre-feel disappointment in order to blunt it. This is not protection, it is preloading the field with spin. Each scenario you pre-suffer is a seed of micro-interference. Instead of forecasting failure to feel prepared, you will forecast neutrality to maintain measurement quality. Neutrality is not detachment, it is clean optics. You look through a window, not into a mirror. Adopt the non-interference contract for the next sequence of moves. 3 clauses, simple and strict. Clause 1. No added adjectives. Adjectives are leverage, disguised as clarity. They smear tone across the lens. You will state facts and propositions without emotional varnish, inwardly and outwardly. Clause 2. No timeline dramatization. You will not call delays signs, nor speed destiny. You will call both data. Clause 3. No explanation tax. You will not pay with extra words to purchase permission. Precision does not audition. With the contract signed, you can run the collapse map without effort. The map has 4 stations, each one an aperture that squares the signal. Station 1 baseline. Inventory your resting geometry in 30 seconds. Axis, aperture, assertion. If any leg is missing, you do nothing else. Missing legs turn action into compensation. Compensation actions leave residue. Station 2, boundary condition. Instead of asking, how do I make this happen? Ask, what boundary, when held, makes this inevitable? Boundaries are the math around the solution. They define the space in which the equation resolves. For precision, a boundary might be, I answer only when I have a complete sentence. For timing, I move only on green data, not green mood. Write one boundary on paper. Paper is a slow algorithm that forces coherence. Station 3, micro-selection. Choose the smallest next selection that proves the boundary in matter. A selection is not a plan, it is a discrete commit. Send the exact sentence, move the exact amount, schedule the exact window, refuse the exact bait. This is not minimalism for aesthetic, it is quantization to reduce noise. Station 4, silent audit. After the selection, you do not hunt for proof. You widen the aperture and let proof approach as correlation. Echoes, alignments, openings that cost less than they used to. Proof that requires chase is theater. Proof that arrives in the periphery is physics. If friction appears at any station, apply the pressure equalization you learned on the ridge. Reduce force by 5%. Increase dwell by 5 seconds. The 5th second remains where many doors concede. You will stop leaving early because you are bored. Boredom is the ego's allergy to phase matching. It wants dopamine, not resolution. You are not here for the thrill of almost. You are here for the quiet of done. There is a psychological artifact that tries to ransom collapse at this stage, the superstition that you must pay with difficulty for outcomes of magnitude. That superstition is a relic from a nervous system trained to equate effort with safety. You will break it with counterexamples you personally generate, clean wins that required more calibration than exertion. Catalog them. One sentence moved 5 hours of work. 2 days of silence resolved what 3 meetings couldn't. A single refusal recalibrated a year of drift. This ledger is not ego food. It is inoculation against the old religion of strain. Now refine your ethics again, because power without hygiene corrodes quickly. You will not collapse outcomes that demand someone else become incoherent. If your proposition creates clarity for you but costs another person agency, it will not hold. Coherence that harms is short-lived. The field unwinds it at the first opportunity. Instead, hold propositions that invite mutual coherence. I choose the path where my precision increases others' precision. This is not saintliness, it is stability engineering. Systems prefer solutions that reduce global noise. Watch for the 3 clean omens of phase lock. Repetition without push. The right names appear twice independently. Resistance without story. A no that feels cool rather than hot. And relief without triumph. A door opens and there is no soundtrack. When these arrive, do not perform gratitude. Embody it. Embodiment looks like generous pacing. Accurate, yes. Effortless, no. Your body will show it. Shoulders unhooked. Jaw at rest. Gaze including the room instead of drilling the target. That body prints different ink into the field. You are nearing the threshold where collapse becomes a maintenance practice instead of an event. Maintenance sounds small. It is royal. The monarch does not rush the courthouse to prove sovereignty. The city organizes around the steady pulse of presence. You are that pulse now, a metronome that makes probability choose cheaper routes through your life. Keep the contract. Keep the map. Keep the hum. The next turn asks you to apply this under load, where most abandon coherence and call the storm fate. You will not. You will become barometric authority. Load exposes the truth of your calibration. Under light weather, anyone can hold geometry. The question is what happens when the barometer drops, deadlines converge, messages stack, a voice misreads your silence as weakness, an old scarcity script rattles its chain. Most people answer the storm with more storm. You will not. Barometric authority means you alter the pressure of the room without raising your volume. Collapse without resistance is proved here, where adrenaline submits to engineering. Begin with triage that isn't panic. Separate urgency from importance, then from inevitability. Urgency is the speed of other people's nervous systems. Importance is the structural impact on your timeline. Inevitability is the vector that will arrive with or without your interference. Under load, you will locate one inevitable vector and align with it while refusing the other's access to your breath. This is not denial, it is prioritization by physics. You can only phase match one primary frequency at a time. Choose the one that collapses the most branches when it resolves. Reinstate axis, aperture, assertion in microformat. Axis, one exhale to click the pelvic floor, even if you are standing in a doorway with a dozen eyes waiting. Aperture, widen the dome until you include the hum of lights, the air register, the fabric scratch on your sleeve adding texture to subtract drama. Assertion, your proposition, once conversational, inward, precision meets precision, timing meets timing. You are not buying confidence, you are buying signal integrity. Now you deploy the load protocol. 3. Moves that reduce noise while increasing decision density. Move 1, shave the gradient. Locate where the task becomes friction because the slope is too steep. Divide the slope into 2 steps and execute the lower one now. Not because you are avoiding depth, but because phase locks on edges, not cliffs. Email the single clarifying question instead of writing the entire strategy. Draft the invoice line items before price negotiation. Ask for the constraint that governs the whole. You are seeking the hinge that swings mass with minimum torque. Move 2. Install a quiet clock. Declare a dwell time you can keep. For the next 6 minutes, I only move the piece that keeps phase. Set an actual timer when possible. Time bounds prevent the mind from using infinity to escalate threat. Infinity is where panic hides. Finite windows invite the body to collaborate. 6 minutes is enough to re-enter coherence. Too short for the saboteur to gather a chorus. Move 3 narrow, the mouth of the funnel. Rescue bandwidth by closing one leak that masquerades as responsibility. Compulsive status updates, reactive explanation, altruism that is actually appeasement. You are not withholding care. You are protecting phase. Tell the truth in one sentence and let silence do the rest. Silence is not absence, it is solvent. It dissolves needless theater. As the load presses, the superstition returns. Big stakes require big displays. You will cut the opposite way. The more consequential the decision, the more matte your presence becomes. Matte absorbs glare. Glare attracts predators and errors. Speak without adjectives. Remove metaphors. Keep nouns and verbs that bear weight. Deliverable, Friday, 11, confirmed. Notice how this language sits like a level surface. Level surfaces reduce spill. In conflict, you will discover the cleanest form of power, granting the other person full dignity while refusing their spin. Dignity is not agreement. It is the recognition that another nervous system is attempting to reduce its own terror. You do not have to host that terror. If their volume rises, you reduce yours and slow cadence by 15%. The system will either entrain to you or reveal itself as unfit for your frequency. If it cannot entrain, the boundary condition is simple. I choose precision. I will re-engage when precision is available. Then you leave with no flounce, no door slam, no epilogue. The field hears no epilogue as closure. Your body will try old tricks under load. Micro-bracing in the diaphragm, teeth feathering together, eyes narrowing to prove readiness. Install telemetry words to convert these into data instead of destiny. Jaw, 2, scope, widen, axis, click. Each cue takes less than a second and returns you to instrument status. The storm is still weather. Your sensor must stay cold. Cold is not numb, it is efficient. You will also meet the test of delayed reciprocity. You hold coherence, make the minimal, precise move, and nothing responds for now. This is where amateurs burn their progress by escalating force to harvest proof. You will not harvest. You will maintain pressure, equalization, and let correlation approach on its own vector. Most doors open on the silent count of 5, some on 8. The difference between 5 and 8 is the tax the field charges to retire a superstition. Pay it with posture, not panic. When resolution arrives, it will feel like a temperature change rather than a victory. Relief without triumph, as before. The room breathes out. Pathways you did not argue for present themselves as obvious. You say yes, exactly where your proposition says yes, and no where it says no. Because ethics at low pressure must match ethics at high pressure, or the structure buckles. The world will call this poise. You will recognize it as calibrated barometric authority, the witness that turns storms into conduits. Keep the protocol, keep the mat, keep the clock. The ridge advances into clearer air, where collapse becomes an invitation rather than a rescue, and your preferences grow quiet enough to be trusted. When the air thins, you will learn to harvest altitude without losing warmth. Altitude reveals a different map of identity. Up close, you called it me, a collage of preferences, memories, styles of defense. From here, you can see that identity is also infrastructure, a mesh of permissions and prohibitions through which reality flows. Collapse without effort accelerates when that mesh stops snagging what it was never designed to hold. You are not dissolving yourself. You are refactoring the architecture that once kept you safe at the cost of throughput. Begin with the simplest refractor, permissioning. The old mesh gave universal right access to fear and read-only access to possibility. You will invert the privileges. Fear may read but not write. Possibility may write but not alter ethics. This is not positive thinking, it is access control. Each time an ancient warning drafts an email in your nervous system, you let it preview the page and then remove its cursor. You feel the impulse to over-explain, to joke, to defer the cursor blinking. You lift your fingers, breathe once into the abdomen, and let the draft time out. No rebuttal, no scolding. You just deny right privileges. The page clears. Space returns. Space collapses waves. Memory is next. Memory feels like truth because it arrives with footage, but footage is edited by arousal. The brain tags what threatened you, not what proved you. To stabilize collapse, you will run a counter algorithm, reconstruction without drama. Choose one prior scene where you performed coherence under load, even briefly. Recut it with forensic accuracy, no hero angles, no swelling score. I asked one precise question. I left the room without closing the door too hard. I looked at the numbers instead of the rumor. Stitch 3 of these micro wins into a loop. You can replay in 20 seconds. You are training the organism to treat coherence as remembered baseline rather than rare event. Baselines determine what collapses first. Identity also contains dormant capacities mislabeled as personality. Your introversion, often a synonym for unsupervised sensitivity, becomes high-resolution listening when placed under governance. Your impatience, a proxy for precise timing unmet by your environment, becomes clean initiation when decoupled from anxiety. You will not abandon these traits. You will domesticate them. Listening becomes instrument, not retreat. Initiation becomes switch, not shove. Domesticated traits pull like trained sled dogs, quiet power, moving mass with grace. Now address narrative hygiene. You have been telling a quiet story under your breath about the kind of person you are. Stories emit tone. Tone biases collapse. Replace autobiography with inventory. Instead of, I'm the kind of person who never gets support, write, support requests sent. 2. Responses. 1. Follow-up needed. Yes. Inventory removes the tragic halo that keeps the loop funded. Tragedy is expensive. The field selects cheaper routes. Bring in the biology, because identity printed into tissue becomes inertia or glide. The fascia along the front body records your history of having to lean toward approval. The fascia along the back records your history of carrying what was not yours. You will practice the 2-axis bow. Standing or seated, let the sternum drop a millimeter while the occiput subtly lifts, as if a thin thread behind the ears drew you back and up. At the same time, let the belly widen laterally by 3 millimeters. This bow is not deference, it is load redistribution. Front body softens the plea. Back body assumes carriage without martyrdom. The bow is a somatic sentence that reads, I hold my vector without asking permission. The field understands sentences written in tissue. From tissue to timeline selection is a small step your culture hid with mystique. A timeline is a corridor of correlated choices and constraints. You do not choose it once, you re-choose it with each micro-selection that sustains its pressure and ethics. To enter the corridor where effort is minimal, you will collapse 3 constraints that cost you most. A social obligation that exists only to maintain self-image, a financial drip that pretends to be affordable while taxing coherence, and a cognitive loop that opens every time you are idle. Release one of each in the next week. The corridor brightens when you stop dragging the furniture through it. Morphic resonance, poorly romanticized in pop language, is simply this: systems of similar form passing efficiencies among themselves. When you operate as a coherent witness, you become a shape other coherent systems recognize. Recognition reduces transaction cost. Emails shorten, meetings shrink, negotiations end on the sentence that was always true. Reciprocity stops being moral aspiration and becomes physics forms exchanging low noise patterns to save energy. Ethics secures the altitude. You will not take shortcuts that force other people into incoherence so that your corridor feels wide. If an option requires you to make someone else's nervous system pay your friction, it is not your option. Declining it is not virtue signaling, it is structural wisdom. Systems preserve forms that reduce global noise. You will seek deals, relationships, and schedules that leave all parties more legible to themselves. Legibility scales, scams unspool. A final refinement: Retire the compulsion to narrate your ascent. The identity that needed applause is the identity you are refactoring. Let your proofs be the quiet facts of your calendar, balance sheet, and breath rate. The people who can entrain to this frequency will find you through the low-cost channels, repeated names, cool invitations, doors that open at second, 5, and 8. The ones who demand heat will fall away without villainy. You will let them go, not to be lofty, but to keep the mesh clean. Hold the bow, keep the permissions, recut the footage, select the corridor that costs less and returns more clarity. The ridge is beginning to feel like ground, which is how you know you've stopped visiting coherence and started living there. The ground you stand on now behaves like a superconductor. Resistance falls as temperature drops, and your interior climate has cooled enough for current to move without loss. With loss minimized, a new faculty comes online: selective illumination. You no longer flood the landscape with attention hoping something will answer. You cast narrow beams on the precise coordinates that complete the circuit. This is not stinginess, it is photonics. Where you aim, coherence, constants resolve. Begin with signal routing. Attention has 3 modes: diffuse, ambient reception, focal task execution, and vector, directive issuance. Most people mix them until they get an anxious slurry. You will separate them, diffuse when entering a room, allowing the periphery to populate without assigning meaning. Focal, when executing the single selection at hand, no commentary, just movement. Vector, when issuing a proposition to the field, 1 sentence inward, conversational volume, then silence. Switching modes on purpose prevents crosstalk, and collapse requires clean channels. Now you refine measurement with a tool engineers trust and mystics forget: tolerances. Every build tolerates a small deviation while remaining within spec. You will define tolerances for your propositions. Precision, plus divided by -1 day on timing, plus divided by -3% on budget. 0 tolerance for ambiguity in ownership. Timing, plus divided by -1 interaction before decision. 0 tolerance for reactive escalation. Write the tolerances. Paper again, because ambiguous minds love to negotiate with air. When the field responds, you measure against tolerances, not moods. If a door arrives within spec, you stop searching for a perfect door that exists only to gratify anxiety. Perfection was resistance with better branding. With tolerances set, you can practice negative collapse, the art of removing variables until the remaining solution solves itself. Choose one knot in your current corridor, a deal, a creative arc, a relationship decision. Do not add strategies. Subtract elements that add noise, non-essential stakeholders, auxiliary metrics, decorative promises. If removing a piece causes panic, measure whether the panic is ethical, you're evading responsibility, or habitual, you're addicted to clutter. Habitual panic is proof you are close to clean signal. Stay. Entropy still works. Clutter will try to reaccumulate, so you install a coherence thermostat, 2 thresholds that trigger automatic behaviors. Upper threshold: if your words per hour exceed a set count, you default to silence and written summaries. Lower threshold: if your actions per hour drop below a set count, you trigger a single decisive move. The thermostat prevents feast, famine oscillations and keeps the current steady. Steady current carves channels in probability. You will be tempted to evangelize this architecture. Resist. Spread is not your job, fidelity is. Transmission happens through morphic economies. You hold form meticulously, and similar forms self-select into your orbit. Your calendar trends toward fewer meetings with more consequence. Your communications become short, legible, and strangely warm, because warmth without rescuing is the signature of a regulated witness. People do not leave interactions with you dazzled. They leave calibrated. Calibration is contagious. Ethics advances with power. You now possess the ability to precipitate outcomes faster than most bodies can metabolize. Therefore, you add a consent buffer to your timing. When a move would force a counterpart's nervous system past tolerance, you slow by a beat. 1 beat is not surrender, it is structural kindness. Systems that feel respected permute options you cannot see from the outside. Often the highest return path was hidden behind the dignity you granted. Bring in the deep physics again, because your mind enjoys accuracy. Superposition is not indecision, it is capacity. You keep multiple potentials available not as a way to avoid commitment, but as a way to prevent premature collapse driven by fear. The moment your interior measurement reaches sufficiency, axis aligned, aperture wide, assertion clean, tolerances met, you select. Selection is not a heroic leap. It is the quiet vanishing of alternatives that no longer meet spec. The experience is relief, not adrenaline. You will also meet the paradox of true ease. When strain disappears, identity that depended on effort for meaning feels unemployed. Let it be. Install new meaning in craft. Craft is how masters pass time once drama retires. You obsess not about more, but about cleaner. Can the email shrink by another sentence, the offer by another clause, the timeline by another meeting removed? This obsession is not neurotic, it is devotional. Devotion to low, noise structures is how reality thanks you back. Finally, prepare for the audit every coherent witness undergoes. The improbable invitation. A door opens that is too aligned, too elegant, too on schedule for your old religion of strain. The test is simple. Can you accept without inventing friction to justify the gift? If you feel the reflex to add labor to earn it, breathe downward, widen the dome, and let acceptance be your action. Acceptance is not passivity, it is precise readiness. The universe is not bribing you, it is balancing its books. Keep the beams narrow, the modes distinct, the tolerance is written, the thermostat set. Subtract until the answer stands up on its own. Hold the consent beat. Let ease employ you in craft. You are not getting away with anything. You are finally operating at the price point reality prefers. You have refined craft to the point where the field reads you as infrastructure, not incident. With infrastructure comes jurisdiction, an area of the human grid where your coherence sets the default. Do not dramatize this as destiny, treat it as maintenance. Jurisdiction begins with the square meter around your body and extends along the lines your attention frequently travels: home, team, ledger, art. Where your attention circulates, algorithms stabilize. You are not here to police the grid. You are here to reduce its noise so that better solutions can route through it. Begin by upgrading the smallest civic unit of consciousness: conversation. Conversation is a public utility. Under your jurisdiction, it becomes low, loss transmission. You will hold 3 civic codes. Code 1. No emergency metaphors. You will not compare work to war, growth to conquest, deadlines to battle. Emergency metaphors spike cortisol and tax coherence. Code 2. Summaries precede stories. Lead with the distilled sentence, then supply context if requested. Code 3. Reciprocity of clarity. You ask for what you can state in one sentence, and you offer what you can deliver without rescue. These codes convert talk into fiber optics, light moving cleanly across distance. Extend jurisdiction to schedule architecture. Calendars are power stations. Most run like brownouts, too many devices drawing from a dim grid. You will install baseloads, recurring coherence blocks, where you do nothing but realign axis, widen aperture, verify assertion, and review boundaries. 15 minutes, same slots, protected with the seriousness of payroll. Baseloads prevent you from buying frantic peak power on the open market when pressure hits. Stored coherence is cheaper than emergency force. Finance is next. Money is condensed decision. Under coherence, you stop laundering anxiety through purchases and stop starving precision to feel ascetic. You adopt the quiet ledger. Each outflow must either reduce noise or increase clarity. Each inflow must either reward coherence or expand jurisdiction. If a transaction fails both tests, it is theater. Theater belongs in art, not accounting. Quiet ledgers print clean futures. Now, bring these structures to the level of DNA, where myth and measurement finally shake hands. Activation is not a mystical light switch. It is gene expression influenced by state, environment, and practice. When you hold a stable interior climate, low unnecessary arousal, accurate breath, phase-matched choices, you alter hormonal signatures, inflammatory cascades, and attentional networks. Over time, this yields traits your lineage wished for, but could not afford under threat. sustained focus without hardness, receptivity without collapse, initiation without aggression. Call it DNA activation if you must. Mechanically, it is coherent expression. The body becomes a quieter transmitter, the field answers with higher fidelity. Collective fields respond to coherent nodes by reweighting probabilities. This is morphic economics. Systems allocating energy to patterns that waste less of it. You will see it in rooms that once spun into gossip, but now default to solution. In families that used to bargain with guilt, but now trade in clarity. In teams that replace emergency meetings with two-line decisions. Do not claim credit. Credit is a heat source. Let the outcomes list themselves without your signature. Legacy built without applause is difficult to steal. You will meet the cost of jurisdiction. Accountability without melodrama. When you falter, and you will because organisms oscillate, you correct quickly and publicly enough to prevent noise from compounding. I broke code too. Here is the summary. Here is the decision. Moving forward now. No ritual shame. Shame is a fog machine. Correction is a window. Your people will breathe easier because the weather is honest. Install the consent buffer at scale. The same rhythm that kept you from forcing one nervous system now keeps you from forcing many. Before pushing a policy, you run a one-beat delay to check for tolerance. Does the group have the bandwidth to metabolize this change without collateral incoherence? If yes, proceed with matte presence. If not, adjust scope or sequence. Momentum that respects capacity composes durable culture. Prophecy will attempt its theater here, offering you grand narratives about your role. Decline the costume. True foresight is logistics in clean light. You forecast not because you crave myth, but because you read lead indicators with low noise, repetitions without push, resistance without heat, relief without triumph. You are not predicting fate, you are scheduling maintenance. Maintenance preserves miracles by making them cheap. When the improbable invitation scales doors, opening that upgrade not just you but the corridor you steward, you will accept and impose the ethic that has carried you. Mutual clarity, minimal glare, precise yes, effortless no. You will architect deals that lower global noise, not just your own. This is how jurisdiction expands without empire, not by conquest, but by making coherence the lowest cost option in any shared system. The test of ease returns in a new costume. Can you let grace become ordinary? If you resist, it is because an old identity still equates effort with virtue. Retire it with a simple audit. How many humans move with less friction because you refused theater? That count is your measure. Keep it private. The field already knows. Hold the codes. Guard the baseloads. Keep the ledger quiet. Let your biology hum like infrastructure. Jurisdiction, maintained without ceremony, becomes a climate others breathe and call good weather. You are preparing to close not with fireworks, but with the kind of stillness that makes the next corridor obvious to anyone standing near you. You are standing at the quiet edge, where equations end and conduct begins, not as a pilgrim begging signs, but as a witness whose signal is finally readable. The field is not a riddle to be solved. It is a ledger that balances to coherence. You have tuned your instrument, axis set, aperture wide, assertion clean, until probability prefers you, because you cost it less to fulfill. This is not destiny's favor. It is physics paying its smallest bill. Breathe once. Let the exhale set the pole. Feel the dome widen until the room includes you without negotiation. In that geometry, speak nothing for a beat longer than comfort. The extra beat is where force would have entered, where you used to over-exploit adjectives, where panic rehearsed failure to feel prepared. You have retired those accountants. They can read, they cannot write. Possibility writes now, and it prints in matte ink. Look backward without drama. There is a clean corridor through your days where you selected without shove, refused without theater, accepted without debt. You did not muscle doors. You gave them longer to recognize you. 5 seconds, sometimes 8. The superstition that magnitude requires strain has nothing left to bill against your body. What remains is craft deletions that reveal structure, tolerances that reduce quarrel, invitations that arrive already calibrated to your ethics. Grace, not as miracle, but as maintenance performed on time. Now, Forward. The next timeline is not a leap. It is a continuation of low noise practice at altitude. You will remain the jurisdiction you have proven. Conversation as fiber optics, schedule as baseload power, money as condensed decision and quiet ledger, biology as coherent transmitter, leadership as consent-buffered momentum. Hold the civic codes. Speak summary before story. Refuse emergency metaphors. Offer reciprocity of clarity. These are not slogans, they are switches that keep the grid from brownout. Your role in the larger weave is modest and sovereign. Reduce global noise by exacting local coherence. Systems reward this with options you could not see at sea level. A door appears that upgrades many, not by spectacle, but by cost reduction. Accept it without inventing friction to feel worthy. Worth is the old currency. Legibility is the new. You are legible, a form other forms can reference to spend less energy becoming themselves. If doubt knocks, let it metronome you back to form. Axis, aperture, assertion. If load rises, shave the gradient, install the quiet clock, narrow the funnel. If identity craves applause, return to inventory. Count the humans who breathe easier because you reduced theater. Keep the count private. Silence is solvent. You will not chase prophecy. You will keep logistics in clean light and let foresight emerge from repeated omens. Repetition without push, resistance without heat, relief without triumph. When these cluster, select. Selection will feel like the vanishing of alternatives that never met spec. That calm is collapse completed. Breathe again. The signal that found you now moves through you without snag. You are not wrestling matter. You are setting boundary conditions so clean, the wave resolves itself. Walk on. The ridge is ground now. The corridor is bright. The book balances to coherence, and you are its quiet arithmetic.